All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Episode 36 with the great Jeremy Davis with us here this week. Unfortunately, Chris caught something at a Super Bowl party and is not going to be with us today, but that's his loss. Jeremy, for those of you who don't know, is one of those rare mortgage leaders who can talk margins and mission in the same sentence and mean it. As president of mortgage at Southern Bancorp, a $5 billion CDFI, he's built a reputation for growing markets by actually showing up for communities. A Housing Wire Vanguard award winner and multi-time National Mortgage Bankers Leadership Award recipient, Jeremy blends innovation, culture, and real human connection to prove you can scale a business and expand access to home ownership at the same time. Expect heart, hustle, and zero corporate fluff. Jeremy, thank you so much to the show. I have to add for everybody, like there's people in this industry who like I don't remember how I met them or who introduced us or whatnot. I know the moment that I knew about Jeremy, and it was at NEMBC. And Jeremy was a speaker, and Jeremy went on to stage. And I mean, I don't know that I have been as inspired and laughed as much as I did at anybody else's talk on stage than the one that you gave that day, Jeremy. You're just an absolute phenomenal keynote speaker. And it was,
Thank you for that.
I just remember I was like, I'm going to hang out with that guy. That just seems like a great guy. Anyway, you cut it. So was really fortunate that I was at that conference.
That was my first time at that conference. So I was a little, you have a little bit of that anxiety feeling before you do your thing on any stage. But also I'm from the South, and a lot of my stories about my childhood are very Southern in their context. And I was like, I wonder if this is still going to work, or if people are going to understand my corner store. When I mentioned like the Chuck Wagon sandwich, I was like, are people going to understand that at all? It turns out, I think it may have been more funny out of context than it was than it usually is when I tell those stories. But that was one of my favorite conferences in a while. Like, I just really enjoyed the structure of that conference, and of course that beautiful town.
Well, and oh god, that town was. I mean, that is such a beautiful area. I wish we that was the one thing. If I had any regrets, was that we weren't there long enough. Like we didn't get to actually enjoy the town as much as I wished we would have. I know PK was like trying to get us to like go off on like hikes and stuff, and we just kept.
PK, you had the right idea.
It never for whatever reason. It is funny though, Jeremy, is I'm sure you've heard this before, is they've done studies on call centers, and people who have Southern accents, people will engage for longer with them versus people with Northeastern accents. So that could also help on stage.
I'm gonna have to really lean into that then.
It's disarming. Okay, so Jeremy, obviously born and raised in the South. We often joke on this show, nobody grows up as a little kid and goes, geez, I just really want to be a mortgage banker. So the first question I have for you is, what did young Jeremy Davis want to be when he grew up?
Oh, wow. That's I did not see that one coming. Wow. I for a long time, I don't think, I was a competitive gymnast growing up. So that was kind of in the back of my head for a while. And then I found out that I'm I have absolutely no skill for coaching children. So being like growing up and owning my own gymnastics gym was not was not
that's what
in the plan.
Do, right? Like,
and I do remember, like in junior high school, this is going to sound so ridiculous. I still have this in my basement. In junior high school, I did a report, a career report And my report was I want to be an account executive. And I find that so ridiculous because also no one grows up to get the mortgage business, and also no one grows up and says I want to be an account executive. I think I must have just gone to the library and started looking through stuff and trying to figure out like what job makes money. Because that was kind of the one resource in my world that was never in enough supply. And so what I wanted to do when I grew up was I wanted to have resources because I've shared many times in some of my speeches and on social media that, I come from kind of a legacy of poverty, a very diverse family. And so that was the one thing I knew I needed to do in my professional career as an adult was I needed to find a way out of that space.
All right, there you go. And I think that's the case for, a lot of kids is they may not necessarily know what is the specific. It's like my youngest son, like he just knows he wants to be an entrepreneur. Like he doesn't know exactly what that is yet, but he knows that he wants to work for himself. Whereas his older brother has literally no desire, it seems like, to do that. So
you traumatized them.
So how did you fall into the mortgage industry?
That is a perfectly worded question because it really was kind of fall into. So I went to get a job. It was meant to be a full-time summer job between graduating high school and my freshman year of college. I had no idea what I was going to do with my career. I had not declared a major, but I got a job. My official title was gopher, and I worked for a loan officer. I worked for a mortgage loan officer. My title literally was gopher. I was 18 years old, and I would go for things. They let me drive the company car. Can you believe that? They shouldn't. I'm not even today. You should not let me drive. But I would go out to houses and I would take Polaroid pictures. I'm dating myself a little bit. I would take Polaroid pictures of the houses and take it back to my loan officer so he could see if the house was really in the shape they thought it was, or if it's going to appraise for what a refinance maybe thought it was going to appraise for. But back then, like I could take a borrower's cert and walk into a bank branch and they would give me bank statements. The teller would sign it and I'd walk out with bank statements and take it back to my loan officer. So literally my name was my title was gopher. Today, I guess we'd call that a loan officer assistant or a junior LO, but I was a gopher. And then I was a hustler. I was brought up to work hard, and gymnastics also taught me kind of working hard and discipline. And so when it was time for me to start school, the loan officer liked me, so he offered to work around my school schedule. So we did that for my first couple of semesters. And then the next summer came around and my branch manager, his name was Jason. I will never forget this man for several reasons, but he came and he was like, are you going to go to school this summer? And I said, I should, but I really don't want to. And he's like, well, why don't you work for us? He's like, we have all these leads coming in. We need more loan officers. Why don't you the business at this point? Why don't you be a loan officer for the summer? See how you like it. And maybe this will, be a career path for you. So I was a loan officer for the summer. I made a lot of money that summer. And I worked all the time too. I literally was working 6 days a week, like 12 hours a day, because they really did they were generating leads and it was like calling people and figuring out the business. And I, at the end of that summer, first of all, I thought I was rich. And I have told people how much money it is, but then I kind of feel like sometimes it's in poor taste. But I was probably averaging, this was a long time ago, guys. I was probably making $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 a month doing what I was doing. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. At the end of that summer, had spent maybe $1,000 of all that money. I had no idea what to do with money like that. I completely thought I had made it. I'm rich now. Like this is going to be my life. And so immediately, of course, when it was time to go back to school started to work around the work, not the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
Because I just saw, it was the first time in my life I saw a path, and also I really liked it. Like I felt like I was doing something meaningful and important. And since then, I mean, it taught me a lot, but, I bought my first house just a couple of years after that. And this business changed the trajectory of my life. And I get mushy talking about that all the time because, a lot of people ask for the why behind what we do. And I always tell people there's a nobility in the mortgage business that is easily looked over or forgotten because we focus on so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
But this business, on a regular basis, I get to watch my teams do for other people exactly what this business did for me, which was a complete change of trajectory. And to this day, I firmly believe that everything that has been created in my life from a professional, financial, even relationship success standpoint has come from what I have learned because of this business.
Yeah, and the one thing that I don't want to say that it's unique to our industry, but I don't know if you know Don Michelle. I'm going to screw up Don's last name.
Oh, that's
from
right.
Plaza. Is it Michelle? How do you say her last name?
Yeah, Don Michelle.
Michelle. Okay, we were talking about this yesterday on the phone, which was, this is an industry that rewards hard work, right? Like I came later to the industry than you, but I had no right, I have no right being in the role that I'm in at this point in my life. But it was just, they were like, here's the door, here's a badge. You decide how hard you're going to work.
That's
and
right.
We're going to decide what happens as a result of that. And that was pretty much what was laid down. And it was really shown that it's like, to your point, it's like, hey, I didn't even know where I'd necessarily go in life, but I was granted this opportunity by this industry. And now for me, I look back on it, and I've got a couple of decades now, and it's like, everything I have is thanks to the housing industry.
Yeah, and I know it's not unique to the mortgage business, but it is a pretty powerful thing to see that as a young person, and I know right now our industry is struggling with recruiting young people into our industry. Maybe they'll listen to this and then that can change some of that conversation for them. But, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know a way out. I did work hard. I was a hard worker. I think I'm still a hard worker today, but probably in a different way. But I very quickly in that one summer learned to correlate the amount of effort and work to, my career path, to fulfillment, and also to how much money I could earn. And for me, that's all it took. I was pretty, super focused from that point on. But no, and that's why I always say there's a nobility in our business that gets overlooked a lot of time, because not only what it does for the families that are in this business as a career, but the ability to do something that I mean, the change, we're changing the trajectory of people's lives for generations by helping them become responsible homeowners. So yeah. I definitely come to it from a place of gratitude. I can't imagine what else I would have done in my life that would have created the opportunities that this business has. And frankly, I don't need to spend that much time imagining it, because this business kind of has my heart, and it's created other opportunities. And wow, I'm just so grateful that accidental kind of falling into mortgage happened when it happened. And I'm very lucky I had a great mentor out of those first couple, the loan officer I worked with, and Jason, the branch manager that I worked with back then, who they really taught me how to do it and do it right and do it responsibly. And it stuck.
Yeah. And it is, I'm going to give a plug because only because I'm one of the authors on it, but the Rethink Everything You Know About Mentorship actually went live today on Amazon.
Oh, congrats.
Congrats. That's awesome.
No, but it's interesting that you brought it up. Like, I think it's the other thing I've noticed about this industry is at least in my 20 plus years in it, is people. I have always found that people are so willing to give of their time, and to help and to mentor and guide along, even at this stage, right? Like, I came from capital markets.
Yeah.
I spent 20 years in the secondary market. Only until a couple of years ago did I really start working a lot more on front end with IMBs and TPOs and banks. And I've been just blown away at the time that people are willing to give, to educate me, even at my elder stage in life, if you will. At this point,
watch it. I think we're the same age. Careful now.
No, I've got to be older than you, Jeremy. We'll just roll with that. So, okay, so it's really interesting you brought up something, because we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but it's interesting. We were talking about the Rocket commercial. And for those of you who did not see my post, I asked my wife after the Rocket commercial if she knew who Rocket and Redfin were. And she turned to me and she goes, "Is Rocket an insurance commercial, or an insurance company?" And if you go back and watch that commercial, you can kind of be like, okay, yeah, I can see
Makes
why
sense.
exactly she said it. But I do think one of the important things that Rocket was trying to get through in that commercial, or I felt like they got through, at least to me, is the community building aspect that I don't think we talk enough about in the industry, right? Which is, when you're renting a home, like I've been on both ends, right? Like, I've rented, I've owned, and I can just be honest in saying that, at least for me, my attitude when I'm in a neighborhood, when I'm renting, has always been a little bit different than when I own, right, the home. And I think when you own that home, you're investing in that community, you're becoming a part of that neighborhood. You're more engaged to meet your neighbors, to help out your neighbors, when they need it. And so that is another, to use your words, noble component to what it is that you do, whether you're the loan officer, the underwriter, the person who's building the tech that makes these things happen. Like, all of us are needed to create that ecosystem, which is ultimately the foundation of community, in our country, in my opinion.
No, I think you're spot on by that. And I think, I think not only is it different when you're a homeowner, but I think community building in general is different. When you're passing through versus putting down roots and getting to know your neighbors, and community's a powerful resource. And I know I talk all the time about community institutions of trust. Barbershops, pulpits, and corner stores is my kind of tagline, if you will. But I mean, really, those stories came out. Those are all personal stories for me, and I've told a few of them. I'm sure you've heard at least the one about my Pa Bill, because I always talk about he used to take me to the barbershop, and we would spend hours in there communing with his the people in the barbershop. He was bald, but we were at the barbershop for hours, and not bald in the way people are bald now. Like, you have clean cut, very sexy bald head. No, he had like a strand, and then he had that stuff around the side, and he had to get those ears trimmed like religiously.
That was my grandpa.
Yep. But that was really my first. I think, as a kid, I mentioned I grew up in public housing a little bit, so there's a little bit of a community in public housing, and I tend to romanticize living in public housing when I tell stories about it, because there were some very lovely community-based parts of growing up in public housing. Smelling your neighbor's food cooking, or, if my mom wasn't home when I got home, there was always another house I could go pile into with other kids and be welcomed in and fed. And
right.
But there's also a great amount of shame in that kind of poverty and growing up in spaces like that. But my first, like, that was kind of like my first experience with grown men sharing and being vulnerable with each other. I don't think that I ever saw that prior to those barbershop experiences. And I think maybe that's why they stuck out so much to me, is that, those guys would share with each other things that I did not hear men talk about otherwise. And it made such an impression on me. I'm still talking about it, 40 plus years later. But the same thing with the corner store. You talk about community, the corner store people, they know everything. My Aunt Teresa ran the corner store across the street from my what do they call it? Grade school or elementary school, and I used to run across the street and go into her shop, sit behind the corner. She made the chuck wagons. I told you about that. And for your audience, a chuck wagon is the most beautiful, it's like a beef tenderloin wrapped in breading, like fried and then served on white bread. And I know you've heard this before, but like when you bite into a hot sandwich that's served on white bread, the bread sticks to the top of your mouth. It's the greatest thing. It was the most fun. But I just remember being in there and watching people's listening to people talk. And she knew everything about what was going on in that neighborhood.
Right.
Everything. And she knew who was struggling. She knew who was trying to buy a house. Like she knew their personal lives in a way that, I always I share with my team, like you need to have a CRM that works the way a barber's CRM works, right? Or a corner store CRM works. You have to be present. You need to be there. You need to experience it, be a part of the community. Don't just go in there talking at them, which I do think is kind of our natural way in our business. We want to go, if we're looking to go into a community, we want to market, we want to brand. And really the last thing we get to is actually going into the community and being present. And I think that might be backward.
Yes.
I think that if we're there a long time before we try to sell things, we go in, we listen, learn who the people are. And listen, people are not shy most of the time. They will tell you exactly what they feel like their challenges are, what the barriers are for them. And it really gives you a chance. I mean, you know how it is. If somebody just tells you every problem that they have, it really makes it a lot easier for you to provide a potential solution that creates a relationship of trust with that person, but also an opportunity to give them a product that you have to offer. But you can't do that if you don't go in and listen first, because again, you're right. We're community building in that regard. And I think in mortgages, we really are, because we're trying to create those homeowners who feel tied to that community, to their neighbors, in a way that at least most renters probably don't identify with quite at the same level.
100%. And I think it's key to just understanding and knowing the individual. I was on a call recently where someone was like, we got like 15, 20 minutes into the conversation and they were like, this is not what you wanted to talk to me about at all. Like that's what they said to me. Like thinking that like I just wanted to talk to them about my AI product and that was it. And I was like, no, actually, I'm like, that's not the case. Like I want to understand who you are as a human. I want to understand how you operate in this world, right? Like I'm just not showing up to just, tell you how you should do things, right? And I think that applies to every aspect. Can we talk a little bit about Southern Bancorp? Because you guys are so this is interesting. There actually are probably a lot of people who don't know what a CDFI is. I'm gonna bank that there are people watching this show who are in housing who don't know what a CDFI is. I happen to know what a CDFI is because and I'm so sorry, Jeremy, we did not know each other when I bought this house. But I would not own a home if it were not for a CDFI lender. Because at the time in which my wife and I purchased this home, neither one of us were eligible for a non-QM loan. We were not eligible for an agency loan. Now you can imagine my interest rate's not great. But so all I was eligible for was a CDFI. So do you mind just kind of telling everybody, because it is a unique designation and there are not a lot of CDFI lenders. And to me, they are an incredibly critical part of the industry and probably not talked about enough.
Yeah. So CDFI is the acronym for Community Development Financial Institution. And being a certified CDFI really means that that's a certification you get from the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury. And it really means that part of the charter of your institution specifically designates that you provide economic resources to underserved communities. And for us, underserved communities can mean a lot of things, right? And for us, it does too. It's rural homeowners, it's first time and low income homeowners, it's Black and brown families. It's really, I like to say left behind communities, because I think, I don't know a lot of mortgage companies who are purposefully underserving anyone. But if you don't get the invitation to go on a trip, you don't even know that you're missing it until it's already happened, right? You just didn't know you needed to be there, which is why I frequently mention left behind. So, but for those communities, as the leader of our mortgage division, it's my responsibility to make sure how I contribute to that CDFI designation is making sure that my team and I are expanding accessibility to affordable, sustainable homeownership. So for us, that means, just like you said, product and program development. We raise capital for our nonprofit, help raise capital for our nonprofit division that helps us with down payment assistance programs that work specifically in these targeted communities. So that's a little bit, a small little tiny bit of what a CDFI does, and it's not really just about homeownership. It is across the economic spectrum. So from small business owners, minority business owners to everything from SBA loans, commercial, retail banking. It's just a little bit different lens, if you will, on which part of your targeted communities, your target markets that you're specifically catering to.
There you go.
I think this is probably a good segment to drop in last week's question from Raf.
Uh-oh. We got serious now.
Are you asking it or am I?
I can tee it up. So I'm going to summarize, because Raf did go on a little bit of a lengthy question there. So I'm summarizing it here. But Raf's question essentially was, there's a lot of investment going into top of funnel customer acquisition. Mm-hmm. How do you get around it? How do you approach it so you're not left behind or left with the breadcrumbs? And how do you build a business case around that?
That is a great question. It's a long question too. Okay, so I'm just processing this a little bit. So, I think, especially for me, I mean, we're definitely a small company and a small team compared to a lot. So I don't really try to outspin the market. I think our approach is just a little bit different. And maybe I'm trying to outlast it instead. I mean, I think a lot of lenders lose at the top of the funnel because they're competing where, first of all, trust is lowest. That is not what my team does. We go into communities first with education and resources. We listen first, and then we build from there, starting with that educational resources, starting with those real relationships. And even, home buying education seminars, we're making sure that we take those and we turn them into digital content for a larger audience. So we're trying to work where trust is highest, not lowest. And I don't think the top of the funnel investment is always looking at that. I think also a lot of lenders are competing where price sensitivity is the highest. That is certainly not a mission-based margin plan. For me, our mission is part of our margin strategy. I believe that when the purpose behind your work has a deep and personal meaning for you, I think people will work harder for you. I think the communities will offer better referrals, better resources for you, and I think your team will stay with you, which is also a margin strategy. And then also, I think at the top of the funnel, loyalty is usually non-existent existent at the top of the funnel. So it's almost like that's not really a funnel; it's a food fight.
That's a good way to put
But
it.
that's what I would say. Is like if your funnel only works when your ad spend is high, you it's not a fun business. I mean, it's a subscription to Google maybe. So for me, like I would combat that with, just like I said, like go into communities to listen first, show up long before you're trying to sell, provide the resources and education that you know the communities need. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I talk a lot about, step number one is to build a team that resembles the community that you want to help, that you want to serve. It's a darn good place to start. But I think we show up in communities first, we listen first, and then we build out exactly what we're told that they need, that we know from our professional expertise will meet and match the need. I hope that provides a good answer to his question. That was a really
no. I think that's spot on, right? And like, and in a world where, and I'm not gonna say that like cold email or social media or things of that are not important, right? They certainly are. But I think actually, to your point, having the real conversations, getting out into the community, right, are the things that have gained even more purpose. Or maybe purpose is not the right word I'm looking for here, but there's more value than there ever was before in that. There was an interesting thing I saw recently that like mailers apparently are like making a huge comeback, right? Like,
Mailers?
and I thought this is so fascinating to me
Yeah.
from an advertising perspective, was because
Oh, like direct
everything's
mail?
gone so digital that mailers are now seeing like an increase in their effectiveness because everybody kind of abandoned it, and it's something like tangible,
Physical.
like
Yeah.
in your hands, like physical. But I think that, to your point, Jeremy, is just getting out into the community and just having a conversation with a person about whatever. Like it really doesn't matter,
It's
right? It's like it comes back to like the conversation I was talking about earlier, where it's like, just because you get on the phone with someone you don't need to leap into your spiel, like right out of the gate. Like I think there's just a tremendous amount of value in getting to know people and where they're coming from, and what they want. It's kind of like the old barbecue test when you're hiring someone, right? Which is like, would I want to hang out with this person at a barbecue? I think a lot of that is now becoming the case with like, hey, do I really want to partner with this person? Do I want to be in business with them?
The vibe check.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is really something said there. Okay, so theoretically, the show's about technology.
Oh yeah,
I do have a point that I want to bring up real quick.
Okay.
Real quick on that one, or 2 points. First things first. I think, Jeremy, you've done the work that's I think a lot of leaders need to do, and it's hard. Which is, how do you like find like that mission and drive that connects all the work that you're doing and like bring that into the business? Sometimes it's seen as two separate things. Like, yeah, I've got this mission thing over there, and I've got like my mortgage business over here. And so I remember just when I worked at Make-A-Wish, which is like nonprofit, right? And it's like the power of the mission. It gets people within the company to actually like really root for and like perform at levels that sometimes they wouldn't do otherwise, right? And be creative and thoughtful. And they might not be even like a recipient of a wish or anything like that. And they don't have kids sometimes. And it's like, but they can still get behind that mission and like do really fruitful work. And the power of that is unique. And so, but I think that's a lot of, I think it takes a lot of introspection and kind of like reflection to be able to connect that deeply. And like, I think that's hard work and of its own kind. It's not hard work in the sense of like, grinding long hours or whatever, but there is like a fruitful aspect of if you are willing to put in that work, you can deeply connect with other people within the business, not just your vendor partners or whatever it is, but also your ultimate end customer and relate to them at a human level.
Yeah, PK, I think you bring up a really important, like business and leadership technique, if you will. Like, we talk a lot about purpose-driven leaders, right? Like it's kind of a buzzword. There are thousands of books about it. You can't pass an airport bookstore without seeing 20 titles that in some way say purpose-driven or mission-driven. And
Right.
The reason for that, though, is because when the clarity that is provided in being purpose-driven or mission-driven really does makes decision making more succinct, more clear. But when you apply that into your culture building, so as leaders, it's our role to build the culture, and it must permeate through you as the leader, right? Every conversation you have, every decision you make has to represent that purpose, that mission. And what I have found, I kind of mentioned this earlier, is my team will go further. They will push harder. They will go the extra mile because they believe in that deeper purpose meaning, which, to your point, that's why I always say to people, like, mission and margin are not enemies. They're actually best friends. Because one feeds the other, and like my margin strategy is fed by the fact that mission is so clear, and the more clarity I provide around it, the more that permeates in my culture. And I always tell people that this is the craziest thing to throw out, but I haven't lost a producing loan officer in 2.5 years. And I throw that out because that is not a Jeremy thing. That is a culture thing. That culture, that deeper meaning is providing the why for an entire group of incredible professionals. We call ourselves the Wolf Pack. And we can get into that maybe if we have enough time, but we really are, we're the Wolf Pack. We hunt together. We know that no one succeeds alone, and it is one culture strategy and one vision of what the meaning behind the meaning is. We talk about, when we share success stories, it's very rarely about numbers and units. It's almost always about, what did you do in that family's life? We have a single mother who has 3 kids, and they all had their own bedroom for the first time in their lives. Or when you have a young parents with young kids that for the last 5 years all they've talked about is getting a pet, and now I have a yard and you can have a pet. Those are the types of stories that build culture, that build that loyalty. But to your point, you get that extra mile out of everything that you do. But in my opinion, I'm asked all the time, like, how do you make a decision that's not the most profitable decision so that you stay loyal to that mission? And I just tell people, like, I've never had to do that. Like, that has absolutely never happened to me. The decisions seem so clear when they're based in that mission. Mission doesn't warrant sloppiness, right? Being mission driven, actually, it's the opposite. It demands excellence, because I might be a mission driven leader, to throw a buzz term out there, but I run a business. My pricing policy has to be airtight, and it has to fit that mission. How we run our operations team, how we integrate technology, that all of those decisions have to meet that mission, or I, as a leader, am failing. And I don't plan to do that.
I can talk to you for probably an hour about this, but I have so many other thoughts. But I feel like we'd go over, and I know we're not a mission podcast.
Well, the irony is you've or not irony, but the reality is you've created community in this community driven mission, right? And so that if I were to look at it from the outside and ask, like, oh, why does nobody leave Southern Bancorp? Well, it's abundantly clear that there's a community, and people feel like they belong. And ultimately, and back with my last company, because when you run tech, it becomes very different than when you're services based. But when I had a services based company and we had a lot more employees, I remember looking up and it was like, I think money was like third or fourth on the list of things that motivate people when it comes to work. It's not, we always think that it's like towards the top, but it really isn't. And I think it's just a testament to what you guys have built over there.
I have one more question, but let's come back to it after you get through the tech stuff. It's for both of you guys.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about tech, and how you guys look at it. I was, early on, and by early on I mean a couple of years ago. Everybody, I'll never forget when people started, they're like, oh, AI is going to replace the LO. And I was like, not a chance in hell. Like that was my stance. My stance was like, all AI products should actually be as focused on enhancing the LO more than anybody else in the organization, because I think that personal attention becomes so much more critical, right? Like I don't need an LO to take a 1003 or an application, right? Like, and I know there's platforms out there now that like they can listen to your conversation and create the 1003, based on the conversation. But how does Southern Bancorp look at technology, and what are maybe, I think all of us are still kind of, I think not all of us, but most people are still crawling a little bit when it comes to AI and adoption of AI within the organizations. But, where is sort of your head at from a technology standpoint? And, what are some of the things that you guys have done, so far as we, march into this, unknown world of AI, which everybody seems to get so scared of?
Yeah. This is interesting because, we launched this mortgage division just 3 years ago, when I came.
Oh, wow. Really?
When I came on board with Southern. And in that time,
it's only 3 years old.
The mortgage division itself.
That's crazy to me.
Prior to 3 years ago, we were very much a kind of maybe a old school like community bank, or maybe even some old school credit union philosophy. So we had general lenders who could, they could give you a commercial loan, they could give you a loan for a tractor, or they could help you buy a house. So it was a very generalized lender format, and we created the mortgage division really to just do a much more scalable version of residential retail mortgage. So in the last 3 years, we have completely implemented a full tech stack, starting with LOS, POS, CRM, all the acronyms, throw them in there. We did it in the past 3 years. We also, went after our HUD and became a Fannie Mae direct seller. And so all of that in the past 3 years. So when it comes to technology, for me, it's about building something that makes sense. And to your point, you use the word enhances the loan officer's ability. That really is exactly what I think about when new technology is involved. When it came to the tech stack, it was about, do they all talk to each other? Are they integrated? Can we actually program them in a way that makes them efficient and makes them tools and not hindrances? And initially it was all about automation, right? So less about AI and more about automation. But as AI has kind of permeated and got more obvious in terms of ways we can use it, that is the big question. Is in for me when looking at that is, does this create an experience that helps the communication path between our borrowers, the families that we're trying to help, and the loan officers who are trying to help them? Right. If so, let's dig in. If it puts a barrier or it puts a tool in place that makes my loan officer less likely to just have a real conversation, I don't want that AI tool. So in a lot of ways, like for me, I'm using AI for a lot of recruiting stuff, follow-up, staying, because I believe your internal PR has to be as good as your external PR, if not better. I believe internal marketing is part of your external marketing plan. So I will use AI for a lot of that. We use AI for a ton of follow-up tasks all over the place, right? Whether that be, taking follow-up tasks away from what would have been a manual process. And also education. I mean, we about 40% of our loans that we close in a month are first-time home buyers.
Wow.
And of our overall loans that we close in a month, over 30% of them have some type of down payment assistance attached to them. So AI is a big part of us knowing who can qualify, what programs will meet their needs, how do we get the access to that funds, all of that. That's what we're doing with AI now. So I don't necessarily know that I'd say I'm crawling, but I'm definitely doing a slow walk, and maybe the wedding walk, take a step together. Like, let's all make sure we understand what the ramifications of this are to our overall business model. Because let's be clear, the whole time I've been on your show today, every time we talk about our business model, it is about being in communities, not being, behind a screen. So
Right.
for us, there is a significant transition, making sure that our use of AI and other technology really complements the ability to be in those communities versus putting up walls.
Oh, 100%. And that's where I think, that's where the most power is for AI with LOs is how do we keep them in the community more and less behind the screen?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like getting them out from behind the screen is actually, in my mind anyways, is what you should really be sort of, gunning for. Because it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what the backlash looks like. We talked about this on the show before, right? Like, we are of somewhat similar age. And I think we fall into that like Gen X zone of like at least for me, I'm like, okay, Amazon, like I don't even want to talk to the DoorDasher, right? Like just leave the food on my front steps, right? Like I'll hear like the thing pull up and I'll like stop on my stairwell so I don't have to like make eye contact, right?
I have done exactly that thing. Stop just shy of where they could see me. Okay, drop the bag. Let's go.
But PK on the other, then you look at like elder millennials who had, I don't know if you remember this, but like when there was this whole backlash on everything digital and like vinyl became cool again, and
it's happening right now.
Yeah.
Is it happening again?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is round 2.
What is it? Gen Alpha and what is it?
Yeah.
What are we called?
But interestingly enough, PK, when we've asked this question, PK really wants the human interaction component, right? And so I do think that we will see that need for that human to human, experience even become more important than it's ever been before. And that's the one thing that AI can't replace, right?
That's right.
Ultimately, at the end of the day. And so if you think about it, like not that long ago, I mean, your parents and my parents, they didn't hide behind screens. There were no Zoom calls. There were no smartphones, right? Like none of this existed, and they carried on life. I think my prediction anyways is we see more of a return towards that, right? So where like AI takes over the stuff that people have been doing in the last, call it 30 years.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we just get more to a return of more actual human interaction.
Yeah. Exact 100%. And I think if AI can take on tasks and assignments that allow us to be connected again, like I think there's an infection of disconnection. Pardon the rhyme. But there is this infection of disconnection throughout all of our lives, professional, personal. It's just so easy to be disconnected. So if AI can take some of the screen time away from us because the task can be automated, or generative AI can actually think through the steps and know which way to go is the most efficient and get that person out from behind their computer faster so that they can be present and relevant in their families, in their companies, but in their communities. I mean, that really, I mean, what are the numbers? Something like, I think it's 70% of new homeowners are going to come from first-time home buyers in underserved communities in the next decade. Can you imagine, like,
Wow.
the amount of time, education, conversation, relationship that must be built to bring those people, all of those communities and families, into the not only the ability to buy a home, but the thought that they too can. Because for a lot of those communities right now, they don't think they can. They don't know the rules. And maybe we can use AI to make us more efficient at teaching the rules of engagement and the education process that it takes. Because I mean, we still know it's shameful, but the vast majority of consumers that think they still need a 20% down payment to buy a house. That hasn't been true for decades.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the vast majority, something like 80% of people asked.
Is it that high?
It is insanely high.
That's crazy.
Insanely. It is by far, I'll just say it's a vast majority. Maybe, 80% I could be, but
and rents are
huge number.
And it's crazy because, like, I know where I live, like, rents are equal to, like, rents are more than buying a house right now, even with interest rates as jacked as they are. There was, we live in a fairly nice house that's pretty big. It's 5 bedrooms. And we were driving by, there's a neighborhood they built recently of these, like, they're like single family rentals. And there was one, it was like a 2-bedroom, like 1,200 square feet, and the rent was the same as my mortgage. And I was like, wait, this doesn't, like, it's literally like a third of the size of our home. And to your point, though, I think a lot of people just don't realize, they think that's their only option whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think we'll definitely see democratization of knowledge, considerably, hopefully with this. The thing I look forward to is, like, one day, like, my grandkids or PK's grandkids making fun of this, right? Like, if you think about it, there is that time.
They're going to be born with the chip in their head, though.
I'm not sure how I feel about that one.
Well, that finally crossed the line.
Now
we've gone too far for you.
I got a quick question, though, because both of you guys touched on this in kind of like different threads of the conversation. Jeremy, you mentioned this kind of towards the beginning in 2 different points. One, we talked about bringing new younger folks into the business. Then you mentioned it again, kind of subtly when you're talking about, like, building your entire team, and, like, you have to hire people and bring people on your team who can connect with different parts of the community, because not the community isn't just one giant thing; it's like multiple different facets.
Right.
So you got to hire people that can look like them, talk like them, understand how that community specifically or subculture kind of thinks there. And then right now we were just talking about, like, this new generation of younger folks that maybe are uneducated about what the ownership requirements are, or the down payment requirements are, and some of the nuances there. But to kind of, I guess the main question there is, and Kobe and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, like, how do you get young people into the business? Because ultimately, if like, I don't know how effectively Andrew would be able to, like, communicate to, like, a Gen Z that's trying to, like, buy a brand new house, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, like, how do you, like, build that team? Technically, you have to develop that individual. Like, somebody put a bet on you when you were 18.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make a bet on the next generation. We're seeing kind of like this aging population with our industries. Like, I guess, like, how do you navigate that challenge of, like, hey, we want the business to continue and grow, but we don't have as many new people coming in late and talk like the next generation of homeowners and home buyers. So, like, how do you deal with that challenge?
Yeah,
Sounds like you figured something out there.
Yeah, I think it starts with intent. And when I mention, like, I always tell people, one great place to start is to build a team that resembles the communities you're trying to serve. That is true of generational communities too, right? So it's not just about, I like to brag at the, we have a very diverse, in fact, we are a majority minority team. But we are providing service to our borrowers in English, in Spanish, in Arabic, in Romanian.
Wow.
That is part of the strategy. It's a very intentful strategy to make sure that we are covering boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and part of that means not trying to get them to come to you, but to go to them. So I will be teaching this year at Middle Tennessee State University's Mortgage Bound program. And it is going to their school, going into their environment and having real conversations, and figuring out what works best in that conversation. So it's very funny that it's like when we do that, we're trying not to be too technical, but to tell real life stories and to give real stories of how careers progress in mortgage. Like, you start here and then you can build this and you can, but really telling that story in a way that would be interesting to someone who is just starting their adult life, right? Just like I was back then. I heard recently this phrase that has just permeated in me, and it is, you are the perfect person to help the person you used to be. So go back to that person and identify again. And I know I will never be a Gen Zer, probably because I'm never going to be that smart. But I think it's about that, being intentful, going to them, listening first. And the information's out there. Like, people like to rag on the younger generations a lot about, they don't want to work the way that we worked. They want more flexibility. They want a title handed to them right out of the gate. To me, it's like, it's all just
the story is old as time.
Yeah, all of the old people always judge young people, vice versa. Like that is old as time. Just like you say, it is never changed. The reality is, why don't we take a look at changing the work structure that actually fits better with a gig-based economy, right? I mean, why don't we just do that? Like, one of the things that got me in this business as a gopher was that it was flexible. If I had 4 gophers assignments today and 3 classes, I could do that around my class schedule. And that turned out to be true even as a loan officer. I kept going to school as a full-time loan officer. So why can't a Gen Zer get behind being, a largely commission-based employee with ultimate flexibility of when and where and how they work? We can absolutely deliver that for younger generations.
Every generation.
I was going to say, I just think it goes back to what we talked about right at the beginning. It's like a full circle moment. Just like, you have to be willing to listen, right? And it's like, if you're just talking shit about the younger generation, about what all the flaws with them, it's like, well, you're not taking the opportunity to listen how, like, that demographic of buyer or, like, consumers are thinking, the way they're wanting to go about their home buying process or even work, right? So it's like, how can you serve them if you're not even willing to understand how they think and think and live their life? So it's like, it's just kind of, it's like a blocker, first things first.
Yeah. And don't we have to accept that they might actually be right? That their way might actually be better? Because I have to tell you, like, when I have a craving for something terrible to eat, like, I don't know, let's just say something recent, like a Hardee's biscuit on a Sunday morning, and I don't want to get out of my pajamas, and I can now have that biscuit delivered to my front door. Are you kidding me? This is definitely better. That's better. Like, maybe their ideas are better. We have to open it up.
All right. Unfortunately, I predicted that an hour would not be enough with you, Jeremy. I said that to Melissa Langdale.
We could go for like 3 more.
I could easily continue this conversation. But alas, we've come to the end. And so you, my friend, have to ask a question of our guest for episode 37, which is none other than the amazing Liz Short from Short Solutions. And what do you got for her?
Oh, I am going to ask Liz Short. How do you ensure authenticity in a digital social media atmosphere where you must be posting constantly, where frequency usually drives the algorithm? How do you stay authentic?
I like it. That's a good one.
Awesome.
It's you, my friend, have never had a problem with staying authentic. It's one of the things I love about you.
It's all I got, man. It's me. That's all there is.
Like if I give that up, there's nothing really else.
That's right. It's
Jeremy,
just me and this floppy hair.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate. We never even got to Spider-Man. Damn it. Okay, next time.
Next
We'll have
time.
to bring you back. We'll have to bring you back now,
That's right.
just to talk about Spider-Man because I'm personally curious, and I didn't ask about it before the show. Jeremy, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's always great to see you. And we'll be talking soon, I'm sure.
Thanks so much, guys. This was a lot of fun. Really.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jeremy.